Marilyn?
Well,
That certainly silenced everyone.
It came as a surprise.
Yeah.
there-
Well,
I said I wanted to record it in case I didn't make a fool of myself. I'd let my kids watch it.
Eileen, you're coming in again as Coco?
I don't know, wouldn't you think I could change this without like once and not continue to come in as Coco?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
just
how
press-
many times
press-
do I have to tell people you're Coco and not to throw you out?
Press on the participants and it gives you the option of changing the name.
Oh, I know how to change it. This is the third time I'm changing it, though.
What a
That,
nuisance.
you know,
Jackie, you can say hi.
Why am I getting this big recording? It says this meeting is being recorded by the host or a participant.
Right.
so
And
you
it's
click
so-
that it. Click that you got the message.
Just click continue.
You gonna watch?
Yeah, it's awfully loud.
It's 4:01.
It says leave meeting.
Jackie, look at how popular you are.
I am so flattered. Wow.
Jackie, this is guilty party Coco's birthday. So during this hour, we have to leave to go to her home for her birthday dinner. However, I'll continue to listen on my phone in the car. Okay.
Oh, well, if I don't bore you, okay, we'll see what happens.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Oh, this is
Well, let's do a brief
Wonderful.
introduction. It's wonderful to see people signing on. And it's even more wonderful to see faces for those who are participating with their cameras on. This is a return to TJVillage schmoozing with a new concept. I'm really happy to have all of you join us. I'm Darlene Daniel, just because I don't know everyone who's on the screen and I won't assume you know me. And my partner in crime is Judy Davidson, who together we chair the steering committee. There are some steering committee members for TJVillage on the screen. But we're very hopeful that those lovely people who signed up to be TJVillage members and haven't participated in our activities up to now will find a comfortable place to be with friends. And that's what our schmooze is all about. So what's new about today is that we're going to focus on each of our schmoozes once a month on a different member or members of TJVillage, because we've been kind of locked into communicating by Zoom, what with the pandemic over the last 2 years. Would you believe that TJVillage, as TJVillage, has never had an in-person get-together? It just kind of blows my mind. And so we're resorting to this kind of a situation in order to try to get to know each other better and to share experiences. So our special person today who we're focusing on is Jackie Wissen. And Jackie has been an active smile and source of joy in our activities up to now. It's a great pleasure to focus on some of her life experiences, which we'll do for a few minutes or more, and then open it up for all of us to share what kinds of, either ask Jackie questions or share anecdotes from our own lives that her reminiscences have triggered. It's a way for all of us to get to know each other. Jackie was kind enough to send me a little bio, and I loved the way she started. She said that she entered the world with a crash in 1929. And I was thrilled to find that Jackie has lived in California, is a Californian by childhood, in as much as I'm a newcomer. I came to California as already a young adult, and I'm fascinated to find out what life was like. It seems to me it was different than what I experienced in a small town in the Midwest, or what my cousins in the big city of Chicago experienced. And so, Jackie, maybe you would tell us a little bit about where in Los Angeles you grew up, and how did you go out on the street to find playmates, or what did you do as a kid?
Oh, that's exciting. I hadn't thought about it that way. I grew up 6th Street near Cafe Circle area when I was little, and then until I was about 8. And then my parents bought a duplex in Beverly Hills. And yeah, we went out in the street. We played kick the can. We rode the bike. We had all the neighbors' kids came out, and certainly isn't what our children and grandchildren are living through now. We were really free to go and come and had super duper time. It was easy and it was open and really, really nice. Front doors were not locked, and it was great. I started out with, my father was one of 7, and all of them came to Los Angeles. So my grandmother had all these kids, and they not much money. So every Friday night was open house at her home, and all of them brought their dates. And then after they got married, they got continued, and we got to come too. And all of us, she lived right behind Sinai Temple, the old Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. And we all went there to Sunday school, had lunch with Bubby, and then we played. And then Friday nights, our mothers all played mahjong, like we're doing. Our fathers played poker, and the kids had fun. And of course, there was lots and lots of food. And when my grandmother died, I was about 10. And the family continued it. We went from one home to somebody else's home every week. So they continued this really close relationship, and it was a wonderful way to grow up. And there are just three of the 12 left now, but we really stay in touch and are close. So that was my beginning. And let's see. So I went to school in Beverly Hills, and walked to the elementary school. My daddy would drive me to high school, or sometimes he took the bus on Olympic, and it was comfortable. You know, I didn't realize at the time how lucky I was. First of all, I thought we were poor because we lived south of Wilshire, and I only had, this is high school, I only had 2 cashmere sweaters, and my friends had many, many more. And then when I got married, I found out what poor really was. I had to clean toilets and the whole thing. But anyway, growing up, it was really easy and fun. So that was it. And so I saw Los Angeles change a lot. I saw from City Hall being the tallest building in Los Angeles. A lot of you have seen the same things, to these sky-rise, high, tall buildings that we have now. I saw the May company, the Miracle Mile develop. I saw the valley was all farmland when I was growing up, and look at us now. And so I remember my mother telling me that when they bought the house, they had to sign a covenant saying that they would not sell the property to anyone but other whites. So that was huge, and my parents were very much against it. And of course, fortunately, I don't remember when it was, but now we don't have such things. I'm very, very, very grateful. So that's kind of the big changes in Los Angeles that I've seen. Let's see, what else can I tell you about? When I was when Beverly High, I played violin in the orchestra, and you know who Andre Previn is? He was in the orchestra too. He played the piano, and he got really bored because he was so good. And the teacher let him conduct. And I remember the harmony teacher telling him that he had to choose. He could not play both jazz and classical. Well, he certainly proved her wrong. And one of the other people that I was in school with and was really in our crowd was Richard Sherman. We call him Dick in those days. he and his brother wrote the lyrics and the music for Mary Poppins. So, we sort of grew up with these people, and they were, kids like we were, and I didn't think anything of it till later on and saw their names up in lights. So that was pretty impressive later on. What
Well,
else?
Jackie, let me ask you a little bit more about that, because it seems to me that you have just a love of music and of at least two-dimensional art, of fine art. Is this something that you've pursued through your life, or is it just something special to you that makes you feel uplifted?
Well, I think that playing an instrument makes you appreciate anybody else who plays it well. So I played it so-so, and but then when I got out of high school, I wanted to have long fingernails like the other girls, so I gave up violin. So you can tell how serious I was about playing an instrument. But I do appreciate music. I love music. I do go to have until recently gone to Disney Hall every year with a series. I love it. And other art I appreciate because I have a lot of people in the family who are artists. And so my home is, even now, even though I had to cull it down a bit, I still have some really beautiful artwork, and most of it's family art. So it's really, 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 really a treasure to have.
So you have not only the art to appreciate, but the association with the artist.
Right. Yes.
Do you think, Jackie, that you'll get back to going to concerts and art exhibits?
Probably not. I think that since I'm not driving anymore, I sort of feel like I love Disney Hall, and I would probably go if somebody asked me to go along, but not as get a series anymore, unfortunately. But I feel like I was smart enough to do it at the time and enjoy it, so took advantage of it
I
then.
know that you, pre-pandemic, you also really enjoyed travel. I think the picture with the
Iguana.
on your hat must be from a travel picture, is it?
Yeah, it is. It is. In fact, Sylvia and I were on a cruise, and we went to the Caribbean, and one of the stops was Honduras, and we went to the iguana farm, and they were everywhere. And there's a picture of Sylvia somewhere with iguana on her, and she is petrified. It was really, but it was fun. We had a great time. I've traveled with Sarah now. That was really wonderful. We had a great cruise there. Sylvia and I have gone traveling quite a few times together, which was just wonderful. And traveling, let's see, I did a whole lot. I really was lucky. I went to the British Isles on a cruise. I went to the Caribbean on a cruise, and the Mediterranean on a cruise. I went to Europe several times. Went to Vienna and Budapest, Slovakia, and Paris several times, and I'll tell you about that one. And let's see where else I've been. Oh, and then I went snorkeling with my son, a lot of great places. But the traveling, should I go on to tell you about my trip to Europe with the family?
I was thinking about that because I know that family through the years has meant a great deal to you. And I've often heard you praise Zoom because that family, that extended family of yours is in many parts of the world, and you've been able to get together on Zoom. So yes, please tell us about your trip to Europe and the family connection.
When my second husband and I got married, he was my first cousin, and he was born in the same house as our mothers in Hungary, which is now Slovakia. And first it was Hungary, then Czechoslovakia, now Slovakia. House is the same. It's over 500 years old, but he wanted to go back, and of course I always wanted to go. So we did. We went to Budapest. We went to Vienna, Budapest, and then to Slovakia. And we got into this little town in Slovakia. It's a suburb of a big city that probably had 10,000 people. And my husband spoke many, many, many languages. And, yeah, Sarah and Alan and Nancy and Alan, remember, he could speak languages. He changed the border. He could change languages. And So we got into this little town, and he saw a sign that said, would you like to take a helicopter ride over the Tatar Mountains? Well, my mother had told me when she growing up, she hiked in the Tatar Mountains and she skied in the Tatar Mountains. And he says, you want to go? I said, absolutely. So we get in the plane, and Eddie speaks Slovak to the fellow, and he said, do you know where Spiska Sapota is, which is our mother's town? And he says, sure. He says, well, would you fly us there? He says, you chartered the plane, I'll go anywhere you like. So we went over this little town, which had about 40 houses, big houses. And he's looking down, he sees the church, he sees the park. He says, it's one of those two houses, but I can't tell from here. So we landed, we got a hotel, we drove into the town, and people came out because this is 1991, right after the Iron Curtain went down. And here we are, tourists with cameras. And so people came out to see what was going on. Well, somebody spoke to us, and Eddie asked where the Hershkovitz house was. And no one knew, but he says, oh, there's an old man. Someone said there's an old man across the park. I'll ask him. So he went over there, and he says, yes, the Hershkovitz house is that one. And when Germany came in, they went to Palestine. Well, we know they didn't go to Palestine. They were taken to concentration camps. So the house was boarded up. There was, there's no entrance in front. So this man we had met said, I can get you in. So you go to the end of the, near the church, we go down a hillside, and there's a river down there. My mother said she went swimming in the river behind her house. So it's so emotional to see the places that my mother talked about. And so we climbed up the hill in the back. And as we were going by, there's an old lady gardening, and she knew my grandfather's name. She knew my aunt's name. She knew my cousin's names. It was amazing. So we get into the house, and we're wandering around, and we go upstairs, and there's what is obviously the master bedroom with a alcove. And I started to cry. He said, why are you crying? I said, because I slept in an alcove in that bed when my parents took me back to see my mother's parents when I was 1.5 years, and I'm sure you did too. And every one of our aunts and uncles when they were born, because they had 10 kids. When they had a kid, they went in the alcove for the baby. And so it was incredible to see this, and it just was amazing. So we went through the whole house, and that was great. We stayed in the town. And then after Eddie died, I realized that I was the only person in the world who knew where our family home was. So, I'm going to backtrack a tiny bit. We took another trip before that. Eddie and I, we found out through his daughter who'd done a genealogy that we had family living in Europe, which Eddie and I didn't know. We thought they were all killed. And so we went to Vienna and visited family. We went to Budapest and visited family. We went to our cousin's daughter's wedding. There were 11 first and second cousins from all over the world at that wedding. And then he and I went to this village, and a whole bunch of them came with us because they lived in this nearby too, their families. So after we went back, and now go back to when my children didn't know where this was, and Eddie had died. So I took 2 trips with my kids, my sister's kids, my sister and her children, and mine, Eddie's kids, and grandchildren. And we took 2 trips because 2 of the children were really too young to go the first time. And so I had, I think, 11 or 12 the first trip, and we went to all the same countries: Vienna, Budapest, Slovakia, and then Paris. And we met family in each place. Even the cousins who lived in Switzerland had a summer cabin in the mountains near the family town, and they came to be there with us. So to be able to see all of this together with our children and our grandchildren was just absolutely amazing. I think it's probably the best gift I could have given any of them, any time. I just feel so grateful I could do that. So we went back about 2 years later with the other kids, so they could all do the same thing, and all the children had the same souvenirs and got to see the same thing. So that one was the trip of a lifetime. That was really fabulous. So
It sounds wonderful. Well, we kind of left your personal story with you as a child, as a teenager. And you talked a little bit about how Los Angeles has changed. The people that I like to quiz about their childhoods in Los Angeles seem to be East Siders or West Siders. It seems as though the population moved from near the area of the original temple to one of those two places. And I think those covenants you mentioned probably had something to do with that. I know there were some areas that were closed to Jews as well. So in the neighborhood you lived, was it a mixed white population, or was it pretty much a Jewish neighborhood?
No, it was quite mixed. It was very mixed. Yeah, both the first house I lived in when I was really young, and then in Beverly Hills, it was integrated whites. So, and yeah, no, it was fine.
And you mentioned what the valley, I'm sorry, go ahead.
In the high school, there was one black student, the rest were white. And then she was either, and I didn't know her, I sort of always felt guilty that I didn't make an effort to meet her. She was either the daughter of movie stars because they could afford it there, or a housekeeper who lived in Beverly Hills. So that, and everyone was white. But there was quite a good Jewish population there, so you didn't feel like you were a minority either.
Did you have a sense that you were growing up in the movie capital of the world?
No, just figured that there were other kids going to school. Yeah, that was a funny sound. No, it didn't feel it was.
So, Vinny, can you mute yourself? You are muted.
Oh, never mind.
I'll see if I can mute it. No, I can't mute her for some reason. Yeah, I can't. Anyway.
The host should be able to mute.
It's good to have you, Vinny. I don't mean to call you out because of the technical problem. It's good to have you part of our group today. So Jackie, did you remain in Los Angeles when you married and started a family?
No. Went to UCLA for a couple of years, got my MRS degree, and my husband had a job in Sacramento. So we went to Sacramento, and we lived in a itty bitty apartment for a few months and found a house out in the suburbs. Everything was a suburb. It's like Los Angeles. Right after the Second World War, they couldn't build tract houses fast enough, as you all know. And so we bought an itty bitty tract house on a huge lot. Everyone was from somewhere else. And we had a great time because no one had family there. I did know one woman, a young girl that I knew had family there. The rest of us were all from somewhere else. And we babysat for each other, and we cooked together, and we shared recipes, and it was really fun. We had a really, it was nice. It was nice. So
that's sort of parallel to what my husband and I experienced coming from the Chicago area to Los Angeles as young marrieds. And it seemed as though the people we were meeting were also incomers, mostly because that's who we seemed to be connected to. How did you work your way back to Los Angeles?
Oh, well, before we got back to Los Angeles, we had my husband, we had a baby first, and then when he was about 3, Bob called and said, how would you like to go live in Honolulu for a year? I said, I'll be ready tomorrow. And so he applied for a job, got the job, and he worked for it was at a territory in 1954. And he set up a civil service examining program there. And so we went over in May. We went on the Lurline. If any of you remember that old ship, it was the way to go. I knew we didn't fly, of course, because we had to take all of our household things and our car, because you really couldn't buy all that stuff there reasonably. So they just said, go on the ship. And of course it was fun. And so we sailed over, and the people he worked for had found a little apartment for us in Honolulu. And then a month later, my sister graduated from Stanford, his sister graduated from Cal, and they said, we're coming to live with you for a year. So of course we had to find a bigger place. So I got the paper out and looked at the ads, and they had houses for rent, Japanese preferred, Chinese preferred, Hawaiian preferred, Howleys preferred. So I went to my landlady and said, what's a Howleys? She said, it's you, it's Caucasians. So anyway, I figured, oh, they're pretty, everybody's open and everybody gets along here. And I looked at places at each one. And of course the ads had prices in them. So I found a house in the Japanese preferred area that was really, really lovely. So I went to the office and said, I'd like to rent this for a year. And they doubled the price. So it was a time, I really had not had any discrimination because I was Jewish, but I certainly was discriminated against because I was a Howley. So, but anyway, we did get this, we did find a really nice house on the top of a hill and called Manalani Heights. We could look into the crater of Diamond Head. We could see all the ships that sailed into Pearl Harbor. It was in a nice backyard and was really, really lovely. There was a boy across the street who was also 3, he was Chinese, and my son, and he played together. And there was a Hawaiian boy next door about the same age, and they played together. And then a new family moved in down the street who were Japanese, and she and I really hit it off. She's from Los Angeles, and we just hit it off. And her boy's the same age. So when my child was playing with a Japanese one, the Chinese child, these are 3-year-olds, were not allowed to play with them. It was really, really, really bad. It's really horrible. And a sidetrack, I contacted this woman just recently, and her son called me too. And he said, do you know that he and I became, this Chinese boy and the Japanese boy, became really, really good friends as adults. So things have changed. So that was nice to hear. So we had a great year. We entertained the people my husband worked for. We entertained with my 2 single sisters. We had servicemen, we had beach boys, all had parties at our house constantly. And it was really, really, really fun. We loved it. I had probably the most fun year and unusual year I ever had. I loved it. It was just great.
Did you come back to California after that?
Yes, I came back. He had a job in Sacramento, and I came back pregnant. Oh, here's another side story. We were there about 6 months, so it was Christmas time. And a lot of the people that we had met, the neighbors and people my husband worked with, invited us for parties. And so they were serving eggnogs, which I had never had before. I was 24 and wasn't that sophisticated. And they had eggnogs and they were so good, just like milkshakes. And I drank quite a few of them and came home and was sick. I said, oh, good, I'm pregnant. I wasn't pregnant, I was drunk. So that was an experience too. And my daughter was furious with us for years because she says, I was conceived in Hawaii, you should have stayed because it's much more romantic to be born in Hawaii than Sacramento. So we had to get over that one. So that was fun.
Well, with all this family in Los Angeles, when you did get back here, what did it feel like?
We moved back with my parents and the 2 children, and because we were looking for a place to live. It was, and I don't know if the rest of any of you would have the experience, but I moved back in with my mother. I became a child again, and she took over. And it was really, really strange. But it took us quite a while to find a house because we had sold ours in Sacramento for $16,500, and the same thing here was really expensive. It was $18,500 in the Valley. This is 1958. So it took us a while to adjust to this big increase in prices. So, but anyway, we moved to the Valley, and we made new friends here, and with the kids' friends and the neighbors, and it was really, really good. Yeah, great. So, and kind of be active in the PTA and the Little League, and before that in the cooperative nursery schools, I was active in those, and did all the room mothers things, all the mom things that you've all done. With, really fun. And the room mothers and the Sunday school, and all the things we've all done. It was a good mom time. It was really nice.
So you were that prized commodity, a volunteer.
In those days, women didn't work, it was pretty natural for us to do that. I was a volunteer, yes. I would collect for all the charities. They say, would you collect on your block? And I said, sure. And then many years ago later, when I went to work, somebody calls me, would you collect on your floor? And I said, sure. So of course, when you collect on your block, if the husband is home, he says, oh, I gave at the office. Well, when I went to the offices, they said, I gave at home. I mean, I really laughed at their faces sometimes, but it was interesting.
What kind of work did you do?
Well, I was brought up to be a Jewish princess. So I really didn't do anything till I was about 36. And one day, our brother-in-law and sister-in-law were having dinner with us with their kids. And he says, oh, I lost another secretary. And so I jokingly said, well, if you don't get one by the time school starts, I'll work for you part-time. I'll take the kids to school and then be home when they get home, when they come back. He says, well, can you type? And I said, well, I took one semester in high school. Do you know shorthand? I said, what's that? And then and on. And he says, can you take care of the books? I said, well, I balance our checkbook, and he kind of close. And so obviously he wasn't too skilled. I said, I will work for you until you hire someone. Then he doesn't have to fire me, because it's kind of embarrassing if your brother-in-law has to fire you. So 15 years later, I was still there and went to work one day and started to cry. And I said, what is going on? This is not me. I know it's menopause time and all that stuff, but so anyway, I realized I was lonesome. I had always been with groups of people and friends and activities, and the salesman, my brother-in-law and his other salesmen were out all day, and I was in the office by myself, and it was it was awful. So anyway, I gave them notice, hired somebody else for them, and then took a summer off. And then I went to an employment agency and said, I want a job. And they said, well, can you do this? Of course. Can you do that? Yes, of course. Can you do that? Yeah. So I knew how to run an office and do things by then. Wow. And besides, when you're PTA president, you learn a lot of organization skills. So that helped. So anyway, in a week, I had 3 offers of a job and double my salary. So that was kind of nice. And I went to work for a commercial finance company called Foothill Capital Corporation, and they were in Century City. So I was working in a beautiful, beautiful building in Century City, and had a great time. And 15 years later, and when my husband had a stroke, he had a stroke, and I needed to quit. I quit then, but so I and then worked for him for 3 years while he struggled. And but I loved being there with a big group of people, and I ended up being assistant to the president, and who is still a friend after all these years. So I loved it. I just really, really had a good time. I looked forward to going to work every day. It was great. It was great.
You've had a life with a lot of stories to tell, and I could keep asking you questions, but I feel as though I've monopolized you, and that I ought to open it up to the rest of the group. So let me ask whether anyone has questions for Jackie, or memories, anecdotes that Jackie's reminiscences have brought to the front of your mind that you'd like to share with us. We're very curious whether we are a diverse group, and whether the experiences that other people have been different or similar. So I think I saw a hand. Gail, yes, please introduce yourself and give us your contribution.
All right, I'm sorry there's background noise, so I'll make this quick. I came to Los Angeles in 1945, and one of the things I remember is driving down La Brea Boulevard, and there were not only orange groves on each side, but there were not lights, there were signals, the semaphores that went up and down with stop and go. And I mean, it's just an interesting memory of how different LA is now. And I grew up, I did not grow up on the west side, and I did not grow up on the east side. I grew up in Hollywood Hills. And I definitely felt that I was part of the entertainment community, because LA by the 40s and 50s, when I was a teenager, had definitely grown into a great big movie theater place. But that's my memories. I bet you remember some of those things too.
Do you remember the oil wells in the middle of the street? Oil wells around the city?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you remember oil wells in the middle of the street in La Cienega?
Yes. Well, no, Beverly Hills High is on an oil well, so
Yes.
Everybody remembers that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else like to join the conversation? Murray?
I moved out in 1956. And while I didn't see the farmlands on La Brea, when we drove over Laurel Canyon, because my uncle lived in Pacoima at that time, in houses that were just built.
Mm-hmm.
That's where all the farmland was. And that's where you could drive maybe a couple of miles and you could smell the dairy the minute you got over across Mulholland. The other thing that I thought was so interesting was on the way to the airport, LAX, even in early 60s, there were nothing but oil wells and oil derricks, thank you, yes. And that has changed a lot. I know a lot of us were not natives here and have migrated here. It's a changed city. In New York, when we moved here, we were going to God's country. I mean, everyone just thought the streets were paved with gold and the weather was just fabulous. So it was fun listening to what you had to say with your experiences, Jackie. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, that's fun. There was one time, I don't know, Los Angeles people remember, when we would go on dates, we would drive up to Mulholland and park. And you'd look over the valley and neck, you know, when that was our parking place in those days.
Jerry's had both a symbolic hand and an actual hand.
I'll take down the other one in a minute. I mean, I knew Jackie and I both went to Beverly High, but very different times. But I also played violin in the orchestra.
I didn't know that.
And I also, as soon as I graduated, that was the end of violin. But what you described of LA is very interesting because, you know, I mean, you graduated many years before I did, and I was born here, and things hadn't changed that much from the time that you were born to the time I was born. Probably because the war, the depression, the war, and so on and so forth. But afterward, my God, this place just took off. Absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, housing tracts everywhere. The valley grew from, you know, as farm to tract houses. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, nobody's mentioned cars and freeways.
Oh, yes.
I'm a late interloper. We moved here in 1960 from Chicago. And there were only 2 or 3 freeways. They all were a couple were under construction, but the number of cars and the freeways, that's the landscape that changed. That's what allowed everybody to move to the hinterlands. You know, I hear people say they lived in Calabasas and it was farmland, and you know, and now it's things have changed and the freeways are what did it.
Marcia?
True.
Unmute, please.
I'm trying to be careful so I don't interrupt anybody.
Yes,
Hi,
appreciate
everybody.
that.
It's good to see you all. Jackie, thank you for sharing all those wonderful stories. I've heard a few of them before, but they're always wonderful. I mean, especially the story about taking your family back to your roots, I think is an absolutely amazing, wonderful thing. My relationship to what you said is really, I moved here in 1946, here to the San Fernando Valley in 1946, and had lived until recently, lived in the valley almost that entire time. And I grew up near, on the border of Studio City and Sherman Oaks, near Coldwater Canyon. And Tarzana was about like going to China. I mean, it was the farthest reach west. I don't remember there being, well, not then. There was no Calabasas then. Tarzana was the end of the world in the San Fernando Valley. And the streets literally were just, well, no, they, you know, orange groves and ranches and horses riding down the streets, no freeway. We had to drive, my family lived in the city. We had to drive over Coldwater Canyon, not Laurel Canyon, Coldwater Canyon, which is probably the scariest canyon of them all. And I lived there, you know, till I got married, basically, except for college. They're fond memories of those times, but it sure is
Coming into
different.
my head, so let me disconnect my.
Somebody. Okay, so I just wanted to share that. I mean, 19, maybe, what year did you say you moved to the Valley?
1958.
58. Oh, okay. Oh, I was gone by then. I was up in.
No, I'm sorry. We came to Los Angeles in 58. We moved to Valley about a year later, 59, 60.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'd already.
Been up 58.
But yeah, the Valley, I don't know if anybody else grew up in the Valley in those
Your,
days.
your high school mate has her hand up.
Oh, Marion, yes.
Yes, Marion.
Bill.
Yeah, Bill is not right here, but I grew up in the Valley. Actually, born and raised in LA and moved to the Valley my family moved to the Valley during World War II.
Mhm.
There were chicken farms. You guys didn't have
Right.
chicken farms and horse ranches and
Horse ranches, right.
and going, like you said, right over the hill, you know, it was Chalk Hill, was difficult to, you know, to leave the, you know, you left the homes, and there were all new homes that were built right after the war.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was quite different taking the streetcar down to downtown LA.
I did that too, yes.
Shelley, did you have your hand up?
Who?
I was asking if Shelley had her hand up.
Yeah, I was just, well, Marcia and I went to North Hollywood High School about the same time. Yeah, I think she was, well, like a half year ahead of me in those days in the LA area. And it was, you know, the Valley was the same school system. We didn't go by years, we went by half years. So, I mean, how did that work? So like, I'm not sure what year Marcia graduated, but I graduated like winter 57, and she might have graduated just the summer before me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so that's, and it was interesting what she was saying about Tarzana being so far away. I remember in high school that I'm trying to remember what other high school, you know, west in the Valley it was, but that was deemed so far away from where we were that they chartered buses and drove us to watch the football game on a bus rather than even have people drive that far. And I mean, you would have to drive or go by bus or something because there was no other way to go then. And that, you know, I guess it was a long time ago, but somehow it doesn't seem that long ago. And, you know, and I grew up in LA near, I don't know if these will mean anything to anybody, till like 3rd and La Brea, and then like Olympic and Fairfax. And interesting, I don't know how large the Jewish population of the city was in those days, but I actually only all the places I lived or went to school before I started, you know, college at UCLA, I sort of like lived in a Jewish bubble, I'd have to say, because these were all areas with high Jewish populations. So, interesting, but certainly, you know, we talked about when you lived in the valley, people would talk about going into town or downtown, and they meant going into West LA, you know, maybe
Hollywood.
Beverly Hills, the Wilshire district. But when I was growing up in LA, going downtown meant really going to, you know, downtown to where the, you know, old Angels Flight and Grand Central Market were, and yeah. So going downtown was like, if you had a car, I mean, I guess, or the bus would take a similar route, you would go downtown, down 3rd Street or down Wilshire Boulevard to get to downtown LA. And all the development that's there now, the music center and all that. It wasn't there before they redeveloped the area and sort of smoothed out the hills for all the development. So it looked very different then. And it was fun to ride on the old Angels Flight.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I did go sometimes with my grandparents down to Grand Central Market, which also was very different than it was now. People, you know, went there for groceries, and yet when we were there, my grandparents let me ride on Angel's Flight for fun, just up and down the hill. We didn't even need, you know, to drive it or anything or to get it, but it was a lot of fun.
The Jewish bubble that you're describing, was it pretty much a social ethnic kind of grouping, or was it synagogue centered? What was the locus of community for you?
Interesting.
Well, while you're thinking, let's ask Jackie.
Okay, it was really social. Some people belonged to a synagogue, and in those days when we were in LA, we didn't. You know, we just sort of observed holidays at home, you know, had seders and that kind of thing. But it wasn't till we moved out to the valley that my family joined a synagogue.
So let me ask Jackie the same question, because Jackie, something we haven't talked about is your family's involvement in Zionism. And I know that Zionism in that period often wasn't religiously connected, that many synagogue Jews were not part of the Zionist movement. The Zionist movement was more of a ultra liberal, less spiritual
definitely, yeah.
more political oriented kind of movement. So what was your experience?
I grew up in a very Zionist family. My father came from an Orthodox family, but he was not Orthodox. Of course, all the religious services, ceremonies and family things were at my grandma's house and then each family's homes. But Zionism was the basis of our home. My father was president of ZOA. He was president of Jewish National Fund. He was president of all the Jewish organizations in town. We had meetings in our home constantly, fundraisers for Palestine. My mother organized young Judea groups for my sister and me. We learned history of Palestine. We learned Robert's Rules of Order. We knew how to organize parties. We and with other Jewish youth groups. And all the Zionist leaders in Los Angeles were at our home for parties, not for meetings. In fact, Golda Meir even stayed at our home for a few nights. And she was here fundraising, and of course she didn't have money to stay in a hotel, and so everybody put her up, and we had a room and bath. And well, it wasn't extra, but my sister and I shared so that she could have her own room. And so she stayed with us, and mother gave her some hats and gloves so she could be dressed up nicely. We had these little blue and white pushka cans. You probably have all seen them growing up. Hollywood and Vine, and we collected money for Palestine. And I think of it now, you let these little, kids, I mean, we were pretty young, or young teenagers, we're standing on the collecting for money, and I don't think I let my kids do it, but we did. Here's an interesting story about my family in Zionism. When I was about 10, I really wanted a bike. I really wanted a bike for my birthday. And my father sat me down and he said, a bike costs so-and-so amount of money. I have no idea what it was. And he says, for that amount of money, we could buy a dunam of land. I'll never forget that word, dunam of land, like an acre or whatever, in Palestine. And several people could have homes there. Now, what do you want? I really wanted the bike, but I could not. So I didn't get a bike.
Wow. Jewish guilt.
Yes, exactly. And my father could do it. My father really did it well at that time. But no, it was really interesting. And we went from different synagogues because we went to the temple where the rabbi was the most Zionist. Of course, during the war, we went to the Sunday school we could walk to because there was gas rationing. But other than that, we went to the head Zionist rabbi in town. So that's it was interesting life. Many years later, I took my kids and we visited my house in Beverly Hills, and I stopped and asked if we could. And they came in, I went in, I told them, well, Golda Meir slept in this room, and they were so excited. Oh my God. And at the time, I didn't realize it was just another friend who stayed at the house because we had people staying there all the time. But I didn't think anything of it till later on. I realized how important she was.
That's great.
Did she, now I know you were a child, so you may not know the answer to the question, but did she travel? Did she have other people who traveled with her, or did she travel on her lonesome?
She stayed with us on her own. So I'm assuming she's traveled by herself. She had not been, way before she was prime minister. She just, a person traveling, raising money.
There's a long, thick, but very interesting book about her called Lioness. And that has come out that has a lot of new source material. And evidently she was quite a romantic. She had her suitors even when she was married. So I think I was kind of asking whether there was any
hanky panky.
Yes.
If there was, I didn't know about it, but I don't think they did it at the house. At our house anyway. A little side thing about the Zionist thing. One of the highlights of my father's life was when he was with Chaim Weitzman. My father's name was Harry, or Chaim. And Chaim Weitzman, he were sitting at dinner, of course, dinner meeting. And Chaim Wissen said, well, Chaim, with, their glass of wine. And my father could say, well, Chaim. Chaim Wissen. My father, that was a highlight of his life. He just was so thrilled to do that.
Well, Jackie, in many ways, you are the epitome of what TJVillage is all about.
Wow, thank you.
Because you have, I mean, I don't think I'm telling any secrets out of school here. You're in your 10th decade of life.
Yeah, yes.
And you packed a lot into those years. And here you are with new experiences by having made the decision to move into more congregant senior living, but still independent living. So that you've really embraced new experiences all the way through. And I know that while we've talked about your past and the fun parts of your life, that you've had many of the same losses and holes in your circle that others have experienced, that with your family, you've experienced health issues and people leaving your circle through death. So what I'd like to ask you is, do you have any secrets to share? Or how have you learned to accentuate the positive the way you always do? I don't think I've ever been in a discussion group where you haven't had something to share that gives you joy.
Yeah, thank you. Like every one of us, I've had some horrible losses. Eddie and 2 daughters, and
2 daughters.
It's really awful. I saw a sculpture not too long ago, and it had a skeleton of a person, face and arms, but the body part was hollow, was open, and so many times I feel like that's me. This part of you that's gone. You can't fill it. You can't replace it. We've lost these people that are so important to us, and they're gone, and they're gone. And for me, as badly as I feel for me to have lost them, I feel worse for their children to have lost their mothers. And how do you go on? I go on because I have grandchildren, and I need to be there for them. I need to be there for sons-in-law, and you go forward, and you don't ever. I personally, there's no void that you can fill. It's there, and it's forever there. But you sort of try and fill your life with things that are good and what you can do for others. And I don't know, it sounds kind of Pollyanna, but it's kind of sort of the way I handle it.
Well, from my perspective, you filled the last hour for me with a lot of good, a lot of interesting stories, and it's been wonderful to have you be our first featured member.
Yeah, one of the ending was it's the last chapter for me, and here I'm so lucky to share it with Sylvia and Jean and Shelley in the same building and to have meals together, and I feel very fortunate. And the nice thing is that the old friends are always your friends forever. And I've made some new friends, which is amazing, it seems to me. And okay, here's a quickie. One of the highlights of my life was being able to dance the hora at my granddaughter's wedding last October. I mean, I was so thrilled, just so thrilled. And all of you have been really, really, really good friends, and you are there for me, and of course I'm there for you. And it reminds me of the old Girl Scout song that you probably know.
Make new friends.
One is silver and the other gold. So thank you, my friends. I just really, really grateful for all of you.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank all of you who came to share with us today. I hope that you'll be back a week from today for a very informative program with Dr. Daniel Stone. And do I have the name correct, Marge? Marge, would you unmute and tell us what we can look forward to a week from today at 4 o'clock?
Dr. Stone is returning by demand practically after his wonderful presentation last year in February also. And many of you have submitted questions regarding medical issues, and he will respond to those questions. He has articles very often in the Jewish Journal, and the most recent one was on COVID, and he'll be talking about that. He'll be talking about medicines, the good and the bad. He's going to be talking, I know one of the questions was, what's the deal? How do you fire and hire medical staff at various hospitals? And he's going to discuss various diseases, which people have submitted their questions to. So it's a very variety program. And the thing is, this is not just for members of TJVillage, because he's going to be discussing things that your children, most of us have children that are adult children. So this is applicable to all adults who join in. And Rabbi Aronson's been very gracious. He's offered to open it to the community. So you can invite friends also, let them have the Zoom links.
So I hope we'll see you then. We're working on scheduling another Schmooze as a meet our member event, hopefully in the early part of March, probably on the 3rd or the 10th of March. And look forward to seeing you all back again, I hope. If you enjoyed, please tell your friends and tell them we'd love to see them too. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you,
Darlene.
Jackie.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie,
Darlene,
and thank you, Darlene.
Darlene, you were a wonderful moderator. Thank
Right.
you.
Yes.
Jackie,
As always.
Yes.
Jackie, Chaim Weitzman was my grandmother's first cousin.
Whoa, how exciting. Whoa, you came from important family too. That's exciting.
No, I never met him. I don't even know if she met him, but
That's it, the genes are there.
and I have a friend who's in Wisconsin. I'm trying to remember Madison or Milwaukee, but that I'm trying to think. You just said the name and now I'm lost. Okay. Golda Meir used to come and sit in his mother's kitchen.
Wow. That's great.
So it's just
Milwaukee.
interesting.
Yeah.
Milwaukee. Okay.
He was
Because
from
I know.
Milwaukee.
That's great. Yeah.
So the
Wasn't
world
he
is
from
small. The Jewish world is small.
It is.
For sure. For sure. Thank you all, everybody.
And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
you
Jackie.
soon.
Jackie, thank you so much. And Darlene, great
Great.
interview.
Yeah,
It was fun to reminisce. Thank you.
yes.
Jackie, I loved sharing this with you. Thank you.
Thank you, darling, for making it easy.
Bye-bye.
Good to
Bye.
see everybody.
Okay, I'm in charge of turning you all out. So whenever you start leaving, I can
Okay.
turn off.